Hello and welcome to Boss Door, the final threshold beyond which games must face their final and toughest opponent, the critical gaming public. My name's Ross.
And I'm Joey.
And today we're going to be talking about Metroid Prime. And, Metroidvanias in general and stuff.
It looks really good for a Gamecube game still.
It makes you wonder, how does Samus experience the world? How should I experience the world while playing Samus? I just find it to be a fascinating puzzle of bad design reverberating through the entirety of a game.
They just put a bunch of fucking shit on your HUD. Metroid Prime is interesting because right before the Gamecube came out, which is the system Metroid Prime was on, the 64 came out, which was largely responsible for taking all of Nintendo's big console-selling 2D properties and interpreting them into 3D games.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Super Mario 64, yeah.
Zelda Ocarina of Time, two
Sure.
of the most famous, popular games of all time. And usually this went pretty well for Nintendo, as obviously from Mario and Zelda. But also sometimes they made Donkey Kong 64.
Yeah, we all have our failures.
And it's just not obvious which games are going to transition to the 3D world.
Yeah, I think we have to have a discussion about game design from that perspective because, I think anything... I'm not going to say it's easy to go from, a 2D to a 3D space, but I do think it should be possible, with the right design philosophies. And it's interesting now to see what they did with Metroid Prime's philosophy.
And you would, honestly, looking at Nintendo's properties, a lot of the properties were kind of made in 2D environments where you're trying to just make stuff that looks and pops off the screen. So it more or less doesn't matter what you're depicting. That's why you have all these platformers like Donkey Kong and Mario, where you're like, I'm collecting mushrooms and jumping on alligators, cool, no more questions. Which don't necessarily 100% translate into a 3D environment, where Metroid is one of the most realistic properties that Nintendo owns.
Yeah, true.
So personally, I've always thought that 2D Metroid was really interesting because it is very different than the other Nintendo properties. For the most part, Nintendo games you wouldn't say have great plot or plot in general.
Yeah.
Right? If we're looking at the era right before it, Donkey Kong is just an alligator stole his bananas, let's get him back. And there's no exploration of why he stole bananas. Why does the alligator want bananas? Or Bowser keeps kidnapping the princess and it's very unclear what his plans are for her.
Yeah, that's frankly most of the plot you get in any sort of early game like this. Nintendo comes off the back of the arcade era, where games just didn't have plot. They were just there purely to be mechanical things that you play and put quarters into. And things like Mario and Donkey Kong, well, Donkey Kong very specifically, comes from the arcade era. And then those ideas sort of transitioned into Mario later. And eventually, we get something like Metroid, which has a loose plot around it, but it's more like an atmospheric game that just kind of tells a little bit of a story through its environment, but for the most part, it's there to be something mechanical still to play.
I think at the time, the first Metroid actually was really cool the way it told the story around its environment, because, one, the game, said by the creators, is based off the movie Alien.
Yes.
First Alien, which is really interesting, because sometimes people forget what Alien started as, because it became a franchise that ran through a bunch of different hands and looked kind of like different movies, but the first movie is just more or less a horror movie, like a sci-fi horror,
yeah,
where the fear is of of an unknown. That's a really cool thing about the NES Metroid. Even though it's frustrating as hell to play, because it's a very old game, it's just this huge area that you just walk back and forth, and you just explore, and then the deeper you go, the scarier and more threatening stuff you find. The first game told its story with, I believe, almost, if not any text on the screen. There isn't a lot going on because basically you're just going deeper into the planet and you run into a brain into the jar and you kill it and then you escape. But it tells some sort of story.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Well, again, it gives you an environmental story, you know, like people talk about this with Dark Souls all the time. Like Dark Souls 1 is as close to like an action RPG Metroidvania as we kind of get, in the way its level design kind of loops back on itself and things like that. And you know, you don't need power-ups to open doors, but you like have to come at doors from the right sides and things like that. But all of its story is really told, it's told often through text and on items and things. But if you don't read all that, it's also told through the environment itself. It's more a game about aesthetics, and it draws heavily from Metroid in that regard.
The original Metroids made you feel connected to the environment because they started the genre, named after itself and Castlevania, Metroidvania. If you play the first Metroid and you don't know actually where to go, it's just such a pain in the ass, because sometimes you're like, okay, I feel like I've explored every room, everything I can enter, there's no dead end. And it's like, oh, you see that lava over there? That's fake lava. It's a hole. Just jump down it.
Yeah.
And you're like, how to know that? It's like, you've checked every pixel of this game. That's what it's here for you to do. And that was the appeal of the game. Like, there's a bunch of monsters all over the original Metroids, and they're pretty easy to kill, especially when you get weapons that can kill them. It's a little harder in the original NES game, because everything is hard on the NES, because
it's the NES.
It's the NES, yeah.
Again, it comes off the back of the arcade era, where games were designed to be harder than necessary, because the primary purpose of arcade games was that you shoveled money into them. You know? Yeah. They were meant to be somewhat unbeatable. That's why they're all like high score marathon games, you know? Donkey Kong and Pac-Man and all that.
And I think that's kind of the implicit like reward of the game, is like when you get to the end and you see Mother Brain and you see Metroids, even though they're just so fucking awful to deal with because it's just hard as shit. It's just something like, it's just a visual you just haven't seen in games up until this point.
Yes.
Right. I think, you know, the first Metroid, you know, looks really interesting. And obviously I think if later on when Super Metroid comes out, one of the best games ever made, the environment really does just bring, like, it makes you consider who you are as Samus.
Yeah. And the story of Super Metroid, where, you know, you really do feel like Samus, because the story is being told through the environment, like I said, but in ways that we haven't ever seen before. Like, all of the enemies in Super Metroid are just like things that live on the planet. You know, they're not like attacking you. I mean, except for like space pirates, right? Which are off planet. They show up later and they actually attack you. But for the most part, it's just like bugs on platforms and stuff. Which is, on a 2D game, a mechanical problem, because, like, a thing's on your platform and that thing can hurt you, and you have to get on those platforms. It's also a way of engrossing people in the feel of the planet itself. You're like, oh, look at these weird bugs. They're everywhere, you know? Do I kill them? Do I not kill them? Do I just pass them up? Most things don't really drop anything useful, except, you like, health and missiles. Like, refill items, but it's not like killing them is going to get you points, you know? You don't level up or anything like that. So for the most part, you go through the areas sort of just trying to like get through, just trying to explore. And sometimes you kill stuff in front of you, sometimes you don't, but it never feels like, oh, I'm here to kill everything in front of me, like you would playing something like Halo or something, right? Like everything in front of you is a bad guy, including all the Marines in front of you if you're like me. But in this game, it's all the enemies are just there. And you can kill them or you can avoid them. You can do what you want. And it makes you feel like you're really on a planet, you know, like in a place with inhabitants. That makes sense.
It's also one of those games where it's kind of hard for the modern audience to understand like what the appeal was at the time, because there was a time in video games where a lot of video games kind of expected you to like make a map on graph paper.
Yeah.
And, like, that sounds probably awful to no one who's ever done that. But at the time, it was cool as shit.
Oh, I mean, there was also, you know, famously Nintendo Power and stuff like that, where it's like, oh, they might not explain things to you because that's something you're supposed to look up in Nintendo Power. Or you're supposed to hear it from your friends, because the internet's not really a thing at this point. You know, in the mid-90s. It's there. Yeah, I don't remember like when GameFAQs started, but it's kind of around that time. But it's not super easy for everyone to just go online and be like, where do I find this? Where do I find that? People had to write up guides on their own, or you just had to hear it from friends.
Yeah, and even with a game like Metroid, if someone knew exactly for where you had to go, it's like hard as shit to describe. Yeah. It's like, you know these 4 identical hallways? Go down the second blue one, third door left to the right, and you're like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, is like the early Metroid games would have these long vertical hallways of just like platforming up. And it wasn't super hard, but it was just kind of like a part of the game where you could like, you like fall, like there would be a lot of like, I fell all the way down to the bottom. And it was just so different than what you normally did. Like most games, you kind of have like the Mario platforming where you're always going forward and you're dodging obstacles, you know, that come at you.
It's a screen scroller.
This is like, there's platforming all the time, but it's just like what you have to do to get from point A to point B. And
yeah, it's just the way you move around the world. It doesn't feel like the challenge that's being presented to you is platforming. Because the challenge, like, when you play the game, the challenge you quickly understand is to explore, right? And platforming is just the method by which you explore. And the reward of the game is finding things, usually power-ups, things like missile expansions, new abilities, and boss fights, right?
Yeah.
The boss fights in Super Metroid are legendarily good, all interesting except for Fantoon. And so, like, you play the game through platforming, but you don't play the game to platform. You play it to explore. And the game is very good at explaining that to you sort of implicitly through its environment. Whereas Mario is like, nothing makes sense, your only job is to jump around, you know, is to get to the end through any means necessary.
And I find like connecting to the world by like understanding the map, like you beat Super Metroid once, you kind of know where everything is. Like your brain kind of organizes where like I've been here a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And you can look at doors and kind of know where they all go to. It makes you feel like I feel like it connects you to the character. And again, like a lot of the storytelling is just like you'll fight Ridley and then after you beat him, you go behind him and there's a broken capsule where the baby Metroid from the beginning of the game is. And the game doesn't tell you that's the baby Metroid's capsule. It's just that's all the story they're going to give you.
Yeah.
And one of the charm about the 2D games, with them telling the story through the environment, is I think it just keeps you engaged with your silent protagonist. And it makes you think about what's it like to be a bounty hunter, like cold, alone, and isolated. You know, what's the purpose? What does Samus care about? What's important to Samus? And it allows you to kind of write your story a little bit yourself in a way that's, I think, actually kind of interesting versus, you know, obviously other Nintendo games where there's no projecting yourself into Donkey Kong. Why are you wearing a tie and nothing else? That doesn't make any sense. You don't even have a job.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting about having Samus being a silent protagonist because everything else on the planet, like I said, is just bugs. It's just endemic life. There's no one else there. Like the Chozo are gone. You find all their ruins, like everything they left behind, you know, but there's not a single other character in the game. Right? So the entire time you're playing Super Metroid, you're just stuck as Samus, and you get in your head about it. You're like, you imagine yourself as Samus on the planet because there's literally no one else to project onto. And I think that's really interesting because it does generate that sense of isolation, that stranger in a strange land kind of feel. But at the same time, it makes you wonder, you know, how does Samus experience the world? How should I experience the world while playing Samus?
I just wanted to touch on one thing because you used a proper noun that even people who played Metroid might know. So I think the Chozo actually are pretty good representations of this. I don't even know how I know what Chozo are. Like, I don't know what game tells me what Chozo are.
I legit don't know what Chozo are.
But in the first NES, every time you get an upgrade, there is a thing that looks like what we'll come to know as a Chozo, which is like, I don't know how to describe it, kind of lizardy looking thing, but bipedal with an arm. Just an alien looking bipedal creature holds all your upgrades in the first game. And in Super Metroid, sometimes the Chozo statues are actually offensive. And sometimes you fight them, sometimes you curl up a ball into their hand and it triggers like lowering the lava for something. At some point, one of the games tells you Chozo's major suit of armor that Samus wears. I don't know where, I just know that's true.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And in Metroid 4, you find out they made the Metroids to fight Parasite X, right? But,
which I think actually gets completely ripped later for actually Halo, you know? The Halo was created by the precursor to destroy the Flood, you know? I think it's just ideas that like they ripped directly from Metroid. Because Halo was completely unoriginal.
Wow, I was just about to get to that part in Halo. Spoil the end of Halo for me, but that's fine.
It's not the end of Halo.
Halo 2?
Nope.
Halo 3.
It's not the end. It's like halfway through. You learn about it in the library. Guilty Spark 343, you know. The worst level in the game.
Yeah, I guess that's why I don't remember that.
And that's where you meet the Flood.
But honestly, I think the Chozo are mostly there for you to try to guess what the fuck the Chozo are.
Yeah, they're
like,
just background stuff.
What was their culture? Like, it's like, okay, I feel like most people get the impression it was kind of like an ancient civilization kind of thing, right? Like, oh, this race, had architects on the planet. But like, what does that mean? What was their downfall and all that kind of stuff. And I think this is a really good version of storytelling for a game like Metroidvanias, because at the end of the day, in a Metroidvania, you're kind of walking back and forth through all the rooms a whole bunch. And so it's interesting to kind of think about what the purpose of the rooms are, why they're here, or how, if the Chozo statues are located in such a way that tells you something about their culture, right?
Yeah.
If the fact that there's invisible platforms here, is that intentional? Is that created by Chozo? There's kind of like a passive storytelling going on that, the audience member is kind of mostly responsible for. You can just play Metroid and be like, I don't know what the fuck any of that was.
That's how I played Metroid, yes.
Yeah. Like a fool. All of this is more or less to say, it does kind of seem like it's one of the Nintendo games that is more fit for the 3D world.
Yeah, because that's the kind of thing that translates really easily. To any kind of environment, right? Like, the environmental storytelling is not dependent on the, whether it's 2D or 3D. And that, when we played Metroid Prime, that does translate really well. But from Super Metroid, which is an extremely tight 2D platformer, where every jump can really be, like, precision made, and they expect you to do that, when we translate to the 3D realm, we enter some problems. Specifically, a very famous problem in video games, which is 3D platforming, because you can't see your feet, right? That's why games like Doom and Quake never had any platforming at all. That some of the hardest stuff in Doom and Quake is just trying to navigate narrow walkways and things like that, because you can't see your feet. It's a classic problem that's been solved in a lot of different ways. Like Doom, the most recent Dooms 2016 and Doom Eternal, they solve it by invisibly extending the platforms in front of you. So when you reach like a ledge, that platform actually goes out like another foot, so that when you're running, because you can't look down and see your feet, if you jump a little late or if you jump a little early, you're probably going to be fine. And they don't expect you to jump in a precise manner.
The problem gets exacerbated by the choice of keeping these long vertical rooms with these tons of platforms all the way up, because they were trying to homage the original 2D games.
Yes.
And that's not a given at the time. Like, when they made 3D Donkey Kong, that game could not be more batshit different than Donkey Kong, and also batshit worse. I guess it's not the use of the word batshit you should normally use.
Yeah, well, DK64, I mean, it is rough playing the game, but its biggest problem really is like collectibles and stuff like that. It's just not a very well designed game. But if we look at something like Super Mario 64 transitioning to the 3D realm, they did the same thing where everything was a lot of verticality and a lot of like extreme platforming, but their primary focus in that game was actually on movement. The thing that makes Super Mario 64 so good was just its jump mechanics, that there's like 16 jumps you can make, and they're all different, they're all interesting, and they all move you in different ways, and lets you move through the environment very fluidly. Now, the reason Super Mario 64 can do that is because it is in third person. You can see where your character's going to land. Again, you can see your feet. I would say the most significant problem in Metroid Prime is its actual control scheme. I have to kind of go into this a little bit in depth. One, it's not dual analog. It goes back to the late 90s where you have one stick, kind of like the N64, right? Where you've got one stick that turns you. Think GoldenEye or... No, Red Faction had dual analog. Think GoldenEye. So in GoldenEye, you can only turn your camera left and right, and your gun stays flat, and then it auto targets on enemies. Or you can hit the R button on your N64 controller, and you can manually control the aimer, the reticle, but you cannot like move around and do both.
That's how we had to play GoldenEye. I did not remember that.
Yeah, but GoldenEye auto targets everything, right?
Yeah,
like that's what's fine. And everything was slow going. All the guards were in one place, or they patrolled a very small area. So if you had a sniper rifle, or were just an incredible shot like I was, because you played it 500 hours, you could manually aim from a good distance, because guards never like unloaded, so you could shoot into the mist and you could hit a guard if you were a good shot. But the point is, they made the shooting very easy in GoldenEye. In this game, they made the shooting somewhat difficult, because it didn't auto-target. You have to hold the left trigger for it to auto-target onto whatever's kind of in the middle of the screen, and only things that are in the middle of the screen. But again, they made the areas like very vertical, and some of the enemies are really big, and so the auto-targeting doesn't always snap onto anything that's nearby or in front of you. So a lot of the game, you do have to sort of manually target around with the R button. And again, you can't move while you're manually targeting, which means you can look up and down, but you can't do it easily, and you can't move while you do it. So when you're jumping, when you're trying to platform, because they tried to move the platforming from Super Metroid into Metroid Prime, you can't look down, you can't look up, you can't really even look around very easily, because even the turn speed is very slow. It means you can't see your feet, even though they give you tools where you could see your feet, theoretically. And what they used the C-Stick for was changing your beams, because this game has so many different power-ups, and they wanted all of them to be accessible at any time, which is fair.
Yeah, outside of the start menu.
Yeah, they never want you to like press start and go and be like, I'm going to go into Powerball, or I'm going to put on my phaser beam, you know, something like that. They never wanted you to do that. They wanted you to be able to switch everything on the fly. That's a fine place to start. When you think about it, you're like, sure, I'd love to be able to access all of my upgrades whenever I want while playing. That's smart. But they sacrificed the actual ability to look around, and I think that sacrifice has massive repercussions throughout the rest of the game. Because you can't look around, you can't see your feet, you can't platform very well. I don't know what they did. I don't know how they solved their platforming issue, but for the most part they solved it by making the platforming really easy. There's never a jump that's like particularly far or particularly difficult. Everything is just like, that's the platform you need to go to. And the hardest times are when the lighting isn't there, you're like in a dark room and you literally just can't see where you're supposed to be going. But that's not a feature, that's just a problem.
There's some overjumping issues sometimes.
Yes.
Where you'll see a platform and you're like, you think you should stretch it out. Like when you first get high jump boots or space jump boots, where it gives you your double jump, it's somewhat difficult because you're used to kind of actually stretching your jumps all the way, and now you just don't have to do it, so you kind of overshoot for a little bit once you get double jump, but then afterwards I think it's a little bit easier. But there's a lot of times the main reason you fall off is because you're trying to get a running start and you just fall off before you even jump in the first place.
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of slide, but it's not very much. Mostly if you land on the platform, you're good. And you do learn to judge those jumps. But once you've learned to do that, aside from the occasional overjump or underjump, the platforms aren't too far away ever. There's never like a stretch that you have to make. It's just very easy. And the platforms are big and very forgiving. You know, you will miss sometimes, but for the most part, it's none of this precision platforming that you see in Super Metroid or Super Mario 64, where you can actually see your character, right? Super Metroid, you have to freeze enemies and jump on the enemies to get around sometimes. And every once in a while we were playing and you would be like, hey, maybe you should freeze those enemies and jump on them. And I was like, that sounds impossible. Because it doesn't... you could give me the biggest enemy in the game and I think I would have a problem jumping onto it. So because they sacrificed your ability to look around, they also had to sacrifice any sort of like difficult platforming. But because the platforming was so easy, they had to add things to the platforms that aren't fun.
Which more or less means shit that knocks you off.
Yes. It
doesn't do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Just makes you start over.
Yeah, also the turning radius, there's not a lot of options in this game. You can't increase your turn speed, and Samus turns at a very slow speed in this game. So a lot of the game is like damage tanking and things like that. So most things really can't do very much damage, or you would just die all the time. So what happens is you'll jump to a platform and like an arm will come out, like a plant root will come out and like swat you off or something like that. A lot of times there are just generic enemies like bugs or mines or something on platforms, and those are generally fine because you can see them ahead of time and shoot them. But those are references to Super Metroid, and I think they don't translate super well to the third dimension. Because in Super Metroid, if there's a bug on your platform, it's doing circles around the platform, and it's in your way because you have to be on that platform. In Metroid Prime, in the 3D space, there's a lot more space that you can jump around. So if you land on a platform, it's not guaranteed that an enemy on there is even going to be in your way. Which means you don't deal with them, and you don't understand them in the same way that you do in the 2D space. So a lot of times you're just jumping past things, or you're not paying any attention, or you just damage tank them because they're not threats. They go from like endemic life that's just living its, like in Super Metroid, they're basically endemic life that's just kind of living its own life. It's just, it lives on that platform and you have to get through. In this game, they just become sort of obstacles that you can sort of ignore or just get out of your way. And I don't think you connect with them in the same way that you do from the 2D perspective.
So I think what we're talking here, mostly about the controls, but also about how they kind of try to take the 2D gameplay loop and put it into the 3D world, illuminates what is kind of good and what is bad with the game. So one thing that Metroid Prime you kind of expect is it's going to be funner to explore because it's a 3D environment with more detail, right?
Yes.
Just the little things on the walls have more to say. Now there's a couple ways they do that good and ways they do that bad. It does it bad because it's hard to look at the fucking walls when your camera doesn't turn with the C-stick.
Yeah, it's because they have the scanner in this game. You can scan like computer monitors and things like that. Like anything that you don't know what it is, if it's stuff on the wall, if it's an enemy, you can target it and scan it. But so many things are just slightly off your eye level and make you have to hold the R button to look around at it. And then you can't change the speed at which your reticle moves while you're looking around. So when you actually hold R, it's way too fast, making it incredibly hard to actually focus on one particular thing. And then once you do get it focused on, you have to hit L to actually scan it. You have to hold it. So it's scanning anything is usually like a 3-button press and hold to actually get anything done, which made me just not want to ever scan anything because it was so much of a hassle. And then it puts some entry into like your diary, generally speaking, that you have to go into the start menu and look up specifically. So there's so much effort involved in scanning anything if you actually want to know what the scan was at the end of the day, that I was just like, I'm not going to scan anything because it's so much of a hassle that doesn't seem worth it.
So I'm the guy who scanned everything in the game to get 100% 10 years ago. So yeah. I feel a little differently, but it's interesting to explore. One, I think scanning is a really cool way to put text in the game for the way Metroid has been done already.
Yeah.
It still makes you feel like you're alone, you're isolated. But it's interesting because when you can scan all the endemic life and it tells you what it's doing. And sometimes the way the endemic life hurts you is like developed evolutionarily. And that's interesting. And you just kind of think about what that implies about the world, and that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I do like that.
If you want to know anything about what the space pirates are doing, you can read about it. If you want to learn about how the Chozo work, you can read about that. Something I've learned from doing this podcast with Ross is I'm way more gung-ho to read text in a start menu than he or seemingly everyone else is. But it's interesting that it's there in a game that just doesn't have to have it at all. Like, you can almost ignore all scanning except for you need to scan elevators to use elevators,
yeah.
Which is kind of bad. But scanning is really optional, and it's also nice. There comes a problem in 3D games. It's a really minor thing, but I think scanning makes this better. Where you're like looking at a wall, and you're like, can I interact with this, or is this just decoration? Yes. And scanning will 100% tell you. If you can't scan it, you're just looking at textures and thinking they mean something.
Exactly. Yeah. Scanning does it is sort of an origin of like important things vision, where you just look at stuff and it's like if it's highlighted, then it's important in some degree. The developers took time to like make sure you understood that this was a thing you could interact with. And the problem with scanning beyond just the mechanical control of it is that there's so much to scan. There's just so much to scan. And it's fine for endemic life and pirates and lore and things like that, but so much of it is just like, here's 10 computers in a room. Every single one of them is a scan, but one of them is like a button that opens the door in front of you, something like that, right? So you just have to, you always are looking around with your scanner trying to like find the way forward most of the time. And it's just a really like uninteresting way to interact with the environment. Like it's a very unengaging way, even though it's a fine enough way to tell the story for a silent protagonist game.
Yeah, I mean, I like the flavor of it. I think another problem for specifically you is the colorblind aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because there's Red squares mean
Important.
And by important, it means it directly contributes to the 100% of the game.
Yeah, and usually it activates doors or elevators or something like that.
Like pirate lore and Chozo lore, you don't need ever. It's just there for flavor, but it does contribute to the flavor of the game.
Yeah.
So yeah, you walk into a room and there'll be 10 computers. 5 of them are red, which means about 4 of them are pirate lore, and 1 of them's gonna open a door, and 5 of them are just like, this is the bathroom, and you're like, okay, you know, like, sure.
Yeah, and then there's orange scans too, right? Is there also yellow?
No, there's just 2 scans.
There's
There's
2
orange,
scans.
which is not important, and red, which is important. They look pretty similar.
Yeah, I almost universally can't tell them apart.
Yeah, and obviously it's not super, like other things in this game, not super friendly to colorblind.
Yeah, but that was very common, you know, back in the day. Is most games didn't have accessibility features, you know, in the way that we see them. And many games today don't have accessibility features. Most people don't really think about the colors they put in their games, but color blindness is a very real problem, and I think even beyond actual, like, color blindness as a disability, people don't really think about the colors they put in their game for their UI. They're just like red means bad, green means go, that kind of thing, right? But they don't consider that, like, those could be other colors. Like, yellow and purple is not just a color blindness setting. It's a thing that you could just put in your game that actually makes things aesthetically better and easier to read.
And it's definitely important in this game, because near the end game, you have 4 different beams and they're all color coded, and everything is color coded at the end of the game.
Yeah,
Metroids, you have to shoot the right Metroid with the right beam. Space Pirates, you have to shoot the right pirate the right beam. Doors, the final boss.
yes, this was a constant problem for me. Doors I could usually figure out because they weren't a big deal. Metroid sometimes, and then we got to the final boss, and he goes through multiple phases. The final boss, Metroid Prime, they go through multiple phases where they change color, and you have to shoot them with specific beams. And, like, I literally had Joy sitting on the couch next to me, telling me the color of the boss because I couldn't tell. Like, sometimes I could, sometimes I couldn't. It was real bad, and that boss is a lot about saving time. So, like, you got to get to the right beam instantly.
And it's funny because the reason they feel emboldened to do this thing where you have to match your beam to the right color or whatever is because they took out the C-stick from being rotate your camera and made the C-stick switch beams on the fly.
Yeah, your D-pad is switch visors, right? There's 4 visors, and then your C-stick is switch beams, and there's 4 beams. But everything, all your transformations, all your visors, all your beams are accessible from the controller without pressing start. Again, cool idea, but I think has massive repercussions throughout the rest of the game.
And they didn't have to do that because in Super Metroid, when you just get a beam, it just adds onto your beam.
Yes.
Like when you get Plasma Beam, your Plasma Beam still freezes like its Ice Beam. It just does more damage and shoots faster.
Yeah.
They made this deliberate choice, and it's one of the things I think hurts the game the most because it costs your camera, it makes doors frustrating, it makes the end game enemies kind of tedious. Because it's just like, it's a wave beam guy. I fucking hate wave beam guys.
Yeah, and that's a constant problem. Is like there are fixes for some of that. Like doors, I think once you open a door, it should just revert to sort of an any beam door instead of like this door is forever only openable with ice beam or wave beam, and every time you come back through, you're gonna have to change to that beam. Like that just breaks flow, especially when you're moving around the map.
I want to explain that a little bit just for people who haven't played Metroid games. So, like, a lot of times in a Metroid game, there will be doors everywhere, and there are ways of locking you off from paths. There'll be, like, a green door, and it's like, you can't open this door until you get a super missile. So you know you have to find that until you can get to that area. Well, in Super Metroid, when you get your super missile and you open that door, the door's just open forever.
Yeah.
Right? Now they gate everything off by having different beam colors, but you constantly have to have that right beam. Plus, there's a bunch of doors that are like that aren't gating off shit. So, like, for example, there's this one area where there's this little, like, long hallway that leads to a boss. And to get to that hallway, you get Plasma Beam. But then you have to Plasma Beam the rest of the doors for some reason. Where it's like, they could just be normal doors.
Yeah.
They're not gating off anything. Are you doing it for flavor? It's not really flavor. You're just kind of making it so, I'm at the end of the room, I gotta make sure I'm at the right beam. And, like, it's a minor thing. It just doesn't offer anything. And again, I think the C-stick issue is the worst thing about this game.
Yes.
The C-stick was a camera, and they just changed the beams, I think that would have helped the whole experience.
Yeah, I mean, this could have been solved by something like a weapon wheel, which I don't know how common that was at the time, if that really existed. But the idea of, like, you could just hit R1 and it pulls up a wheel that would, briefly pauses the game and you switch your beams quickly. But they put on R1, this is also a GameCube controller thing, because, like, you have an R1 on a GameCube, but you don't have an L1. And if they just had that one extra button, they could have solved this whole problem easily with a weapon wheel. But they assigned R1 to turning into the Morph Ball in this game, and they didn't have another button. So they just didn't go with the weapon wheel. But if they had a weapon wheel, we wouldn't really have this kind of problem.
Or my pitch. Once you get a beam, it's just your beam.
Yeah, I can understand trying to separate it out and being like, okay, we want ice to be different and stuff like that. I think that's fine. But yeah, it has this problem where, like, okay, all doors have to be color-coded now. And sometimes you'll be going through areas and it'll just be like a series of different beams for doors that are kind of in a row. It's like, well, this one's ice beam and the next one's wave beam and the next one after that's plasma or something, right? And that's really annoying because you're like, just let me keep moving. But you can't because you have to keep switching your beams. And color coding the enemies later, aside from color blindness issues, makes it really tedious to fight them, because switching your beam is not an instantaneous thing. You don't just flick between them. You click it and your gun has to, like, glow and then glow again, and then you're on the right beam, and then you usually have to charge the shot. And it's really tedious to switch between your beams, especially when 3 enemies in the room have 3 different colors, and you move slow, you turn slow. There's a dodge, but it's not very good, so mostly you're just tanking damage while you're slowly switching your beams, and you're like, kind of wish this was just a better system.
Ross is bad dodge. I'm great at dodge.
Yeah, there's so many things you couldn't dodge, even if you were good at it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, pirates are shooting you. There's 3 pirates in a room, and they're all shooting you. There's no dodging. You just tank that damage. There's nothing you can do about that, except hide. That's what I do. I hide all the time.
I gotta go beat a bunch of pirates in a room to prove Ross wrong.
And we're back. Joey lost horribly.
I don't want this in anymore.
And the point I'm trying to make about this beam stuff is because they made them so accessible, because they focused so hard on making the beams always accessible, it had this knock-on effect where they made all these enemies different colors and all the doors different colors. They made a lot of the bosses will switch colors. At least the final boss does, and maybe not all the bosses, but most of the enemies at the end of the game tend to be color-coded and stuff like that. So the end of the game just becomes like a slog of switching beams to hit the right target at the right time. And it makes it really unfun in a way that, like, combat in these games shouldn't be unfun. It really shouldn't even be a focus. They didn't make good first-person shooting controls. And they certainly shouldn't have focused so hard on just changing your beam all the time to fight things. That's a boring, unengaging way of fighting things. And it really takes you out of the game.
And one of the appeals of Metroid and also Zelda is when you get to the end game of that game, if you did a decent amount of side stuff, found upgrades or whatever, you're bullshit powerful.
Yeah.
Like in Super Metroid, at the end game, you get Screw Attack, which you already have an infinite jump.
Yes.
Now you have an infinite jump that you spin that just kills every non-boss it touches.
Yeah.
And like that's like you just don't touch you just go through the level like a comet as the life just collides against your body. Whereas the end game for this, you're just like is the hardest part of the game.
Yeah, well, because again, they're designing enemies around the beams, right? It's like, okay, well, I got ice beam, and now it's fun to like shoot the flying pirates down. But the flying pirates are designed around ice beam, things like that. So later you start seeing just tons of flying pirates, and then as soon as you get a few beams under your belt, you just start seeing a bunch of pirates that are color-coded, and it's very clear that they just designed around the beams rather than trying to design anything that was like unique or interesting in the world.
Yeah, like so to talk about the power level point that I was just making is that's actually one of my favorite parts in Metroid Prime is when you get your ice beam and when you get your plasma beam.
Yeah,
there are jetpack guys nearby. There's space pirates and jetpacks. And when the first time you see them, I think you've just gotten your wave beam, which is like better than your starting beam, but like
it's not very good.
It sucks. And it's like, man, these guys are fucking frustrating. Like I want to throw missiles at them, but they dodge missiles sometimes.
Yeah.
When you get ice, the first time you see it, you see a pirate, you shoot your ice beam, it freezes, and then you missile and dies instantly. You're like noob comboing him, another Halo reference. When you get your and that's that I think that's you feel, even though Ice Beam shoots at a slower rate, it allows you to feel the power of the beam. But when you get Plasma Beam in Space Pirates, you just spam A and they just melt in front of you.
Yeah, there's some Space Pirates that are like invisible, and normally you have to go into your thermal visor, which can see heat, it's obviously, and that's how you can see like these particular invisible enemies. But in normal visor you can see like a shimmer. Once I get Plasma Beam, I stop using thermal visor and I just spam A in front of me, and as they run up, they just die. It's just, they have no chance. I'm like, I don't need to even see you anymore, because if you're in front of me, you die.
And so, like, right when you start doing that, they're like, now pirates are color-coded because we made Plasma Beam too good. But It's like, no, Plasma Beam can just be too good. That's how they worked in all the other Metroids, and it was fun.
It feels good, right? And then it feels real bad when they're like, here's a Wave Beam pirate. And you're like, yeah, Wave Beam, my favorite. I love going to that. And they're like, here's a Charge Beam pirate. I'm like, no, stop. This is my basic beam. I haven't used this for anything ever. This, like, as soon as we got Wave Beam, we were done with that beam. But they keep making you go back to it. And even the final boss has one of each beam. And it's like, it's really nice when he's in Plasma Beam form, because that just does more damage.
Yeah. Yeah, like you want to play with your toys.
Exactly.
It might not be obvious to the listener, but I actually like this game a lot. I just do think it's really interesting how one specific design choice really is emblematic of all the flaws in the game, and you kind of see how that spreads like a virus to hurting all these different aspects of the game. So we talked a long time about the beams in context of attaching to the C-stick, and then making that you have to use all your beams. But the other issue is just how much not having a free camera takes away from the atmosphere that they were mostly really good at building. One really cool thing about just playing the game in general is while you're always walking around in first person mode, there's lots of visor effects that happen.
Yeah.
Like you go near a waterfall, the water goes on, you go near steam, it fogs up. You get shocked by electricity, you can see the reflection of your face in the visor. Outward facing visor.
You can see it underwater a lot too. Your face just kind of like appears on your screen.
Yeah, and it makes it ominous. It makes it look good. It like visually, it's really interesting. It's really good at making you feel like you are Samus and you are in the world, and just kind of being, in an impenetrable suit, wandering around the environment.
Yeah, and the HUD in this game is like really well put together. Like when you're just walking around, you kind of see the edges of the visor. You can see Samus's face. Her gun is always extended out in front of her and things like that. It does a really good job of putting you really in Samus's suit, which is, I think, the point of putting everything accessible to you at all times. Because, like, Samus wouldn't have to enter a pause menu to change beams and stuff. She would just have buttons for that. But in this game, we don't have the controls of Samus' suit. We have the controls of a GameCube controller, and that's limited in its way. So it didn't work out, even though the idea was good.
I actually do think that one of the best parts of the game is how good it looks really good for a GameCube game still, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, it really does.
And I think like, especially, there's a couple of places. There's Talon Overworld, which is a forest area. Chozo Ruins is a sand area. An ice area called Fendra. A lava area. I always say it wrong, sorry.
We're gonna say Fendra a lot, but it's Fendrana for your purists out there.
Yeah. And the mines. Phazon mines.
And Magmore.
Yeah, I said Magmore, but you're correct.
I don't listen to you when you talk.
Yeah. But the ice in the forest area look really good, and they have really cool visor effects. I like the way the magma area looks, but it's like hard to make it like it's magma.
It's a lava area. It's gonna be red rocks.
And Chozo area does look really cool, but it is like, I resent sand from 12 years of Tatooine.
Yeah, sand is always hard to make interesting, but they do a pretty good job. Like the Chozo ruins do feel like at least ruins that you're walking through. Like everything's like broken. There's like in one of the first little sections you go to, you have to cross this little bridge, but the bridge is kind of destroyed and it's been overgrown by roots, and the roots have become like the biggest part of the bridge. And there's like a hive of wasps that live around there, and they attack you when you go across the bridge. And it just feels like things live here, like nature's sort of overrun the Chozo ruins, and you're exploring, and that's, I actually feel that way less about all the other areas. Like Chozo ruins, I think, aesthetically the most interesting to me, because everything else, I don't know, it feels like as the game progresses, Chosen Ruins doesn't have a lot to offer you in the beginning because you don't have a lot of movement options or anything. And when you get into like Phendrana, the ice area, you get into the later Magmor or into the Phazon mines and stuff, it becomes a much more mechanical thing where it's like a lot of platforming and a lot of different beam doors and stuff like that, a lot of different enemies that you have to focus on, and you can focus less on the environment around you, which is, again, is also hindered by the fact that you can't look around. You can't look up and down or anything. You could, but you have to stop walking, and I don't know, if you got a break flow to just like move your camera around, it's not very great.
And a big problem that Ross noticed a lot while playing, which I never really noticed, is just everything's so goddamn dark.
Yeah.
There's just so many areas where there's like a platform above your head, and you know it should be in front of you, but like you just can't quite see it, and there's like it's hard to move your camera there. Your beams create some light, but not really enough.
Yeah, they don't reflect light into the area.
So there'll just be whole areas where you'd get stuck, or we would get stuck being like, where the fuck do we go? And it's like this huge opening to the left that somehow is hard to see.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, it's because, you know, all the walls kind of look the same. And it's like, well, in that particular instance, the opening was kind of like, you had to go forward and turn around. It wasn't just look left. It was kind of this weird, like, loop around. But we literally got stuck in a room for a minute because we just couldn't find the huge opening because it was dark and everything looked the same.
And it's hard to turn.
Yeah, and that's rough because there's a lot of platforming sections that have similar problems where you're just like, I think that's my next platform. And a huge problem with platforming in this game is that because it's simplistic, it's mostly just literal floating platforms that you jump from one to the other constantly. It means there's nothing below you. Like in the 2D Metroid, it's a vertical shaft. And the platforms below you are literally below you. So if you fall, you don't... I know we said, you know, you can fall all the way to the bottom, but most of the time you don't. You'll catch some platform somewhere. In this game, that is not true. If you fall off a platform, there's nothing below you because you're mostly moving in like a big like spiral of floating platforms going up a room. Which means if you fall off, which is a primary way in which they make platforming difficult, is just push you off. You go all the way to the bottom. And because the platforming is simplistic, I'm going to keep reiterating this, because your C-stick can't look around, it means the platforming is also uninteresting. So what happens a lot of times is you get halfway up a room, something knocks you down, and you just repeat that room sort of a lot. And maybe eventually you get good at it, maybe you don't, but almost every time you get knocked down on platforming in this game, you go straight to the beginning of your platforming. It's not fun.
I think another thing that it definitely affected you, and I think it does affect the average user, is when you get knocked down, you get frustrated, and then you start to kind of try to cut corners. You're like,
yeah.
It looks like I can skip that platform. So you try to jump, you know, from 1 to 3 instead of 1, 2, 3. And sometimes you can do it, but like the platforming is really like, they really want you to do it their way.
Yeah.
Like if you just play by their rules, the whole thing will be easier. But a lot of times their rules are just like, square my shoulders to the thing, jump, stop, move, square my shoulders. Whereas in a lot of games, when I platform, I kind of never stop moving my feet.
Yes.
Right? This game, I feel like a lot of times once you land, you stop and you rotate probably 40 to 95 degrees.
Yeah, because if you consider
45 to 90 degrees.
If you consider in a 2D game, if there's a platform above you and you jump and you miss, generally speaking, you can recover and probably land on the same platform you jumped from. You know, you missed it, or there's like another platform on the other side that you can jump to. This game just doesn't have that. If you miss your jump, you simply start over. And because the platforming is simple, it's boring. It's not fun to do over and over again. And it doesn't feel like a skill that you learn. It just feels like a problem you have to overcome. So the entire game, 90% of the platforming in this game is a problem to be overcome more than an actual skill to learn, which is sort of the absolute opposite of what you get in the 2D Metroids, where jumping is a skill that you learn.
So there's one more thing that I'm very overtly negative on that I want to touch on, and then like maybe try to say some positive things about a game. I'm
definitely going to say positive things. I for all my ramblings, I enjoy this game. I don't think it's a bad game. I just find it to be a fascinating puzzle of bad design reverberating through the entirety of a game. It's really interesting to me, even though
I think they make a lot of good design choices. There's just the one choice in particular that I think really hurts it.
I don't know if I can like think of another game where I can just point to one thing in the game and be like, that's the problem. That's the thing that causes all the problems, you know? And I find Metroid Prime just kind of fascinating for that.
Yeah. I think you can do a couple games we've already reviewed. Detroit Become...
Racism, yeah.
No, I was going to say David Cage.
What's the
He's
difference?
The problem.
We're contractually obligated to say David Cage is allegedly a racist.
I hope not. Why would I sign that contract? Who made it?
I wrote it in MS Paint.
But on the other side of the controller, away from the C-stick, is the D-pad, where they attach visors to it. The same problem they have with the beams, they also had with the visors, to a somewhat lesser extent, but also to a worse extent at the same time. You have 3 visors. You have your scan visor, which is kind of hard to use.
You have 4 visors, right?
No, you don't.
There's only 3?
Yeah. Because that's one of the reasons it's a bad design, is because you have a thermal and an X-ray visor and your other visor. And then you have your looking. You're looking.
And scan.
That's not normal, unless you're counting normal as a visor.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not really a visor.
Well, it's one of the directions on the D-pad, right? It is a thing you can switch to. So, like, yeah.
I swear to God they move around, though.
They don't, but...
I don't know. When I was playing it, every time I'm just like, X-ray is no longer here. Where's the move?
Yeah, but that's because I was playing it, and you didn't actually know the buttons.
I'm 100% in this game.
Yeah, well, know where your visors are, alright? Normal up, thermal left, X-ray to the right, scan down.
Yeah, I find it difficult to internalize that because even though they make you use them a lot, you never have to use, like... You're usually not using it on the fly, except for at the end of the game when they make you do that.
Yes, they make you do it constantly. And on top of that, the visors suck.
Yeah, that's
I can't think of one visor that I enjoy.
The two things. I mean, I actually think scanning visor is kind of cool and has cool, flavored applications. The problem I have with thermal and X-ray is they just put a bunch of fucking shit on your HUD. There's like 3 overlapping triangles on thermal, and it just like covers up your whole fucking screen.
Yeah, it covers up, I would say, more than half the screen. Right? So thermal is a lot of times you use it to see in the dark and use it to see invisible enemies. But they so over-design the HUD for thermal that it becomes you almost can't see.
And it's annoying because the way they use thermal, the most part, is sometimes will be a circuit that connects to a door. They could only see using thermal. And if you hit it with a wave beam, it gives it electricity. But what they do is they'll make you platform up to this door, realize the door's off, backtrack, shoot these little switches with thermal visor, and then go back to the door.
Yes.
And it's not a puzzle.
It's not. Because thermal can see through walls and stuff. So most of the time you can stand at the door and just turn around and see most, if not all, of the switches you need to hit. It's not a puzzle to be solved. It's just a thing to be done. And before you get thermal, they do the same thing with scanner visor. In that you will just go up to a door and it'll be like, oh, you need to scan 4 plaques that we put on the walls in random locations throughout this room, and then the door will open, and you're like, sure, that's just that's a time waster puzzle, and it's not a puzzle again. It's a find the thing, and then the door opens,
which again is difficult because you don't have third person mode.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and on top of that, right? So thermal has a huge HUD problem in that it blocks most of the screen. Scanner visor, it only gives you a little strip in the middle of your screen where you can actually scan anything, and everything else is sort of blurred out. It's kind of fish-eyed around. It's hard to explain, but the only really clear thing you can see is this little strip in the middle of your screen, and that's also the only location you can scan. It'd be one thing if it used your whole visor and you could just look around and see everything that needs to be scanned, but you have to really zero in on each thing that needs to be scanned if you want to be able to scan it at all. And again, that's really hard to do because the controls are awful. X-ray visor I don't have a huge problem with. They just don't really use it at all in the game. They use it for a couple of things.
Yeah, you need to fight one type of enemy, Chozo Ghost. Couple invisible walls, not really, really not that many.
Yeah.
And,
some invisible walls can also be, can be thwarted by thermal visor, you know?
There's a part after you kind of go through all the areas where you have to find 12 artifacts, kind of for no reason.
Yeah.
And like a couple of those you need X-ray. You're like, oh, you couldn't see this because it's invisible. But see, it felt different than it was in Super Metroid. In Super Metroid, you get an X-ray visor, and it's just there for you to examine every square inch of the map.
Yeah.
And like that was fun for players at the time without game facts and stuff, where they're just, I don't know how many missiles expansions there are. There's seemingly a lot.
Yeah. And that's the point of it, right? Is you are supposed to be able to see through the walls, and it shows you the missile expansions and the energy tanks that you've missed. You go into every room and you scan every inch of it because this is the one game you're playing that summer.
Yeah.
You know, you've got the time to do that, and it doesn't feel like a burden.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to find shit.
Yeah.
Like again, I've beaten the shit out of Super Metroid so many times, but it's amazing how I can beat that game in like 2 hours, and I still don't know how to do like a bunch of beep shit.
Yeah.
Like every time I watch someone play it online, I'm like, oh yeah, I know you can do that. I can't even guess what the buttons are.
Yeah.
The game has like a lot of depth.
Yeah, it has a lot of depth, and it does not explain any of it. It leaves you in the kiddie pool, and then you kind of look over and you're like, was there a deep end this whole time? Like, yeah, we didn't tell you about that one. But in this game, this is also something that doesn't translate, again, to 3D, right? Because in a 2D Metroid, you can walk into a room and you can scan the floors and the walls, and you know you've scanned the entire room, right? Because there's only the two walls in the floor and ceiling, right? In a 3D game, you can turn on your X-ray visor, and also it's first person. You might be missing something because you weren't in the right part of the room looking in the right direction. It is much, much harder to fully examine an area in a 3D game than it is in a 2D game.
A good example is there's an artifact where they give you a hint and they say, in this room that is named, at the top of it is a hidden room. And you're like, that 100% means X-ray. We know the room. We know how to get to the top of it.
Yeah.
And we jumped to the top of it a whole bunch of time. And it took us a good 20 minutes to find the door that was just open the whole time. Like, it was just there, but...
It was just behind an X-ray wall.
But our camera wouldn't face that all the time.
And ironically, we found it with thermal visor, because doors show up on thermal visor, even through walls. So eventually, we just, like, we were at the top just looking around, just checking visors, and we've done this multiple times already. But again, you can't look around easily. So... eventually, we just turned our camera in the right direction, finally. And Joey was like, was that a door? And we go and look, and we're like, yeah, that was a door. We just had to... There's basically an invisible wall blocking our way. And there was just no way to know. And it wasn't really a big room, you know? There's a lot of vertical platforming, but it's basically a big cylinder. Like, it's not that hard to look around, you would think.
Yeah.
But we couldn't find where we were going.
And you know it's at the top because one, they tell you, and you're like, you just wouldn't put it here.
Yeah.
X-ray at the very does, whenever you get hit and you put your hand up, you can see your skeleton. That's kind of cool.
That is cool, yeah.
But for the most part, like, I don't know if the visor's added a lot. Like, thermal, I think, is actively detrimental because they make you use it to find shit that is not actually a puzzle. And like, oh, cool, you made this pretty area ugly with this horrible visor.
Yes.
The black and white is kind of cool because even when you're fighting Chozo Ghost, it's kind of fun to be black and white fighting Chozo Ghost.
Yeah.
I know, it just kind of brings me back to an earlier era of games. And, you know, it's kind of fun or whatever.
Yeah, I don't hate the look of X-ray visor.
But, like, then you get to the final boss and they're like, you have to switch between thermal, X-ray, and normal visor the whole time you're fighting him.
Yeah.
Just because they want to incorporate the mechanics, like the things they put in the game.
Yeah, there's nothing that makes sense about it. They're just like, well... It's just like the beam thing. It's like, well, you have access to them, so we're going to make you use them. And it doesn't turn into like a well-structured fight. It just turns into like a mechanically demanding fight. And not in like a way that, like, Dark Souls is a mechanically demanding game, right? And that you have to hit everything properly at the right times. It's mechanically demanding that it demands that you hit a bunch of buttons, and none of them really seem to... like, matter a lot, except that you just can't see and thus target the boss unless you're in the right visor.
And it just feels like you'd want to use your visors to, like, incentivize people to have fun and explore. And instead, it's, like, thinking either mostly used in combat or mostly used in a situation where you're like, oh, door has no power. I can tell it has no power because there's a visual indicator.
Yeah.
I have to use my thermal.
Yeah.
I talk about this a lot with Zelda, but it's like in Zelda where you get the Megaton Hammer, and then for a little bit the game is like, use Megaton Hammer here. And like, that's not an interesting item.
Yeah.
Because the only time you use it is for switches that more or less just have the word Megaton Hammer written on it. And so then you use it, and then you put it away, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, not a fun item.
And a big reason you can't use the visors really for exploration is we talked about this a bit outside of the cast while preparing for this, that this game isn't like really a Metroidvania in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a lot of like exploration and backtracking. It has some for sure, and it comes in more at the end when you have to get the Chozo artifacts. But they pretty much tell you where the Chozo artifacts are. If you scan the things, it tells you, again, it's like, oh, it's in this room at the top. It's, invisible door or something. So you usually know where you're going and what you're looking for, and it's mostly a game of just like getting there. There's no fast travel, so you have to walk. But there's not really like a lot of any hidden rooms or anything like that. So they don't use the visors really to explore, and the game doesn't really incentivize you to explore in the way that Metroidvanias traditionally do.
Sorry. Usually what the game does is they get to a point, they dead end for no reason.
Yeah.
They tell you they dead ended it, and then you have to kind of like walk back to your ship, and while you're there, you're like, I'll hit this stuff I can open now. And then you just go right back down the pathway that the game was kind of leading you from, from Chozo to Phendrana to Phazon to so on.
Yeah. Like a Metroidvania, usually you'll probably take a long journey to get to a door you can't open. And you don't have any information besides you just can't open this door. Time to turn back. Time to go explore a different branch. Whereas this game, it's pretty linear in telling you where to go. It's like, okay, we got Ice Beam. The only way to go is like forward now. And it spits you out in this room. And this room has like Ice Beam doors, and you're like, I'm going to go through that, There was one time it did actually fail me in that, because it gave me Ice Beam doors, and it led me into the sunken ship, which you need Gravity Suit for, because it's all filled with water. And I got all the way down to the bottom of that, and it did turn me around. So that felt like a Metroidvania.
And if you don't have the Gravity Suit, it means you can't jump well, and it's just not fun.
Yeah,
it's just like,
it's hell, because you're in an underwater zone without Gravity Suit.
Yeah, like now our platforming is extremely precise.
It's really rough.
In a way that you will not have fun, and then you'll get to a point in the game is like, you can't go here. And you're like,
cool. Time to go back, right? And if it wasn't filled with water, that wouldn't be a problem. But for the most part, like when you don't, like that was the only time I can really think of. It asked me to take a wrong turn. Other than that, it always like spits you out where you're supposed to be going, right?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you completed this boss. Here's a door that opened. You go through the door and it spits you out near your ship, and you're like, oh cool, I have this ability that lets me go to this door that's like in front of my ship that I wasn't able to get to before. And then you go through that, and you're like, here's high jump boots, and it spits you out again at your ship, and you're like, cool, I can go through Chozo ruins because I remember a high jump there, and it's directly in front of you. It's never just like, wow, I'm really stuck in Phendrana, maybe I have to go back to Chozo. It's never like that.
Yeah. So and it's kind of interesting where it's like, okay, it's good to kind of homage to have you sometimes backtrack, like I see what they're doing, but like honestly, I felt like it could have been better if the game was just kind of focused around like more or less what I call Zelda dungeons. Because there's like a part in that game where like you're like, oh, you walk into a pirate base, and like you're just gonna be in that pirate base until you get to the boss. And that's basically a dungeon.
Yeah.
You're gonna come out with something, probably thermal visor. Or something, something whatever.
I also think when you play the 2D Metroid, there's stuff that's like Morph Ball that kind of makes sense in the game world, like diegetically. Usually it's like you go into a Morph Ball, you plant a bomb, and you blow out like a little section of wall, and that lets you go through these little mole tunnels that you can go through. And sometimes they're like little mazes and stuff, but usually you have little bugs that crawl through them and stuff, and you kind of assume that like these were made by the endemic life that lives there. Like you're just sort of exploring, and you kind of go through walls and crevices and stuff with your Morph Ball. But in this game, most of your Morph Ball stuff is directly like tunnels and pipes and stuff made by the Chozo.
Clearly man-made.
It's like this area is made for Morph Balls, and it doesn't make sense. It just feels like a mechanical thing. You're like, here's a spider ball track that just goes over lava and kind of breaks sometimes, so you have to like jump between tracks, which is mechanically fun to do, but at the same time, it's hard to be like, why on earth would anybody make something like this? If you play Super Metroid and you think, this feels right. this is a cool way to move around the world. And you play Metroid Prime, and you're like, this feels so mechanically driven. Like, you start seeing half pipes everywhere once you get your speed ball, and half pipes allow you to like jump sort of really high. You know, it's a half pipe, right? You're
like a skateboard half pipe. See, I think there's a member of the audience. It's like, well, a half pipe like you can skateboard on. That can't be what they're saying. No,
yeah, no, but it is, right? And you start seeing a lot of that stuff, and it's like cool. How did the Chozo ever get through their own home? You know?
Yeah, the Chozo have one statue that literally bowls you down a track and throws you into the sky to a magnetic track that you have to click onto, where I guess they store an energy tank up there. Weird choice, guys.
Yeah, it's very weird. But sometimes the game has you morph ball through like collapsed tunnels or like tree roots and stuff like that, and that always feels great to me when I'm like, oh man, where do I go? And I see there's like a little gap in the trees and the rocks, and I'm like, it's a morph ball hole, and I can go down there. And it's much less entertaining when I'm like, where do I go? And I'm like, there's a little breakable wall there that I have to bomb and then go through a perfectly circular tunnel designed for me to morph ball through. Those aspects of exploration feel so mechanically driven that it really takes me out of the experience in a way that like Super Metroid, the 2D Metroids never did.
Yeah, I think morph ball is really interesting overall too. There's good and bad things. Like when you go into the morph ball, you go into a third-person camera mode that I actually think visually looks really good. Again, you can't rotate the camera. Now, it feels like you could just, at that point, have a rotating camera on your C-stick.
Yeah.
But they didn't do that.
It's maybe the worst option, which is where they have like a fixed camera. You can't look around at all. The camera affixes to where it wants to be relative to the morph ball. And
it rotates, too.
It rotates, depending on where you roll, but you don't have any control over where that camera's going to go or what it's looking at.
For the most part, it's fine, because most morph ball areas are in a two-dimensional space. You're, like, pressed up against a wall, and it's kind of a 2D thing.
Yeah, it'd be like a side-scrolling thing.
And this is one of the things, Ross is more or less complaining about, where it's like, you'll bomb jump over little, like, stairs. I'm drawing it with my fingers, because it makes more sense that way. But you'll just kind of jump up little things that don't require any skill from the player. It's just you drop a bomb, you hold forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's no point to it, right? It's like this could be a tunnel, but instead you have to like bomb jump up some stairs, and then you get to the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, you just do it a lot, and it's not testing anything. It's just kind of like a visual and physical change of pace.
Yeah, it's completely pointless, and it's not that bad. Like I didn't hate it, but it doesn't feel like interesting either, especially when you're trying to move fast, when you're trying to like get through an area. You're like, okay, I looked on my map, I know exactly where I want to go, and I'm trying to go there. I have to go through this morph ball tunnel that's just sort of like a full minute of bomb jumping for no reason.
Yeah,
it just slows you down.
And one thing I think they did on purpose was a lot of the boss fights will have attacks where I believe the idea is you turn into a morph ball and you hit the speed thing and you yeet away. And every time, like, Ross was having trouble with the thing, I'm like, you should turn into a morph ball. And he's just like, it's slow and it takes your camera and it sucks. And, like, that's a reasonable response from the player where it's, even if you want me to do this, half the time I go into a morph ball, get hit anyways, and then I don't even know where the boss is.
Yeah.
Because I lost my camera and I turn so slow. I think it's a really cool idea. Like, I like that. Like, there's a guy who rolls into a ball all around, and you can just yeet away as the ball, right? Or when you fight the final boss, there's little tunnels you can go under. So when he runs across the ground, you're below him. Like, it's an interesting kind of dodge mechanic to add. Like, Master Chief's never going to do that. Like, it's just a different sort of thing to add to a combat for a game with a lock-on system, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like, when there's a lock-on system, it doesn't really matter, like, how good you are at shooting. Everyone's shooting at more or less the same quality. It's about dodging. And so having unique ways to dodge that other shooters don't is somewhat interesting. But practically, it's kind of hard to use them in battles. And then in the real world, in exploration, morph ball tunnels are usually the thing that the Megaton Hammer example. Use morph ball. You are done. That's it.
Yes.
Right? There's some cool situations. Sometimes you find cool morph ball stuff. Sometimes it's just fun to go down hallways in morph ball.
Yeah. Morph ball's pretty fast.
Yeah, I think it's a fast way to travel. So I think it's a cool addition to the game. It just would be nice, as you already said, if it was incorporated more organically, or the camera was better, or just like a little tiny, bunch of little tiny things you can do. But I think it's a really unique thing to add to the game. And it's nice to have 2D sections because it just kind of reminds you of an older Metroid.
I do like this. And you said this before, but I'm going to say it again. The morph ball looks cool as hell. Like, it just looks so good, and as you get more upgrades, it changes color and becomes, like, more and more cool. And after a while, it just kind of looks like a sick rim you would put on your car. It just, the way the morph ball moves and rolls, and it leaves a little light trail behind it, like it's a Tron motorcycle. It's just very cool to look at.
Yeah, it's like, you're just aesthetically happy the whole time.
But it takes, like, a full second to transform, and then you lose your camera, and you don't even know which way the camera is going to be facing when you morph ball. Sometimes it'll, like, completely 180 on you. So it can be really hard to actually, like, fluidly go into morph ball and actually move in a direction. Oh, and that was my biggest complaint is, there was a boss, it rolls into a ball, and when it does that, you should roll into a ball and roll away. But most of the time, it didn't matter for me because I would get hit either way, and if I go into a ball, I lose track of where the boss is, and that sucks, right? So I'd rather just damage tank it. And that's what I did, you know? But that's how most bosses work. It works really well in the final boss, because the final boss is in essentially a hallway. The boss will be on one side, you'll be on the other side. And when you have to morph ball and go into the tracks, it morph balls and it stays where you can see the boss and you can see the tracks. The camera goes to a place that's, like, accessible and usable, whereas that rarely happens any other time.
So that's kind of interesting if you think about it. I just kind of realized this on the spot. The 2 boss fights that I think are kind of fun, or funner. The first boss, Flashgra. Yeah, I didn't read the name this time. I just did it from my childhood.
It's the only one I remember because it's the dumbest possible thing to name it.
It's pretty cool, though.
Flashgra?
Yeah, I mean, I'll pull up a Pokemon right now. Oh, we'll go through a list and see, on average, where would it rank.
I ain't about to defend Pokemons.
Yeah. That is a battle where he's in the center on a flower, and you kind of have a track around him, and there's, like, mirrors on him, and there's a whole little gimmick to fighting him. That's not really the point of what I'm trying to go into. It's a fun gimmick, kind of interesting fight. But because you're on a track, it's easier to go in ball mode because you're always focused around the boss.
Yes.
Same thing in the final boss. It's a hallway, you always know where the boss is. The 2 fights that watching Ross had the most trouble with was the fight where this big rock monster turns into a ball and rolls, and
the Pirate Elite.
And the Pirate Elite. Both of those are in big circular rooms, and Ross, or you, or however you want to say, would lose the sense of place, right? The Pirate Elite has poison on the ground, so when you, like, and you can't see it because of the camera, so half the time you're, like, pacing, trying to get a good angle, and then you're just taking damage, and it sucks.
The Pirate Elite, there's 3 spots of phase-on which damages you throughout the room, and it's like in a triangular pattern around the room. And the boss just slowly marches towards you the entire time, so your natural inclination is to back up constantly. Now, you cannot move and turn at the same time, and that means you want to always keep the boss in front of you because you're trying to track his movements. And even though he walks slow, you also walk slow. He kind of gets to you pretty quickly. You can't get away easily unless you turn into Morph Ball. But if you turn into Morph Ball, the camera just completely does whatever it wants to, and most of the time, it's not gonna help. Like, at least me, it doesn't help me get away from him or avoid the phase-on or anything. It just makes me lose my bearings. So, mostly I just had to, like, damage tank the phase-on because I can't look behind me either. Because the turning speed is so slow. I can't actively look behind me and in front of me. And, I don't think you can turn and move at the same time. So, it's really ridiculously hard.
So, yeah, I think that's one thing is the game should kind of, like, tighten up its spaces. Like, a thing they do with their rooms that I think is really smart and creative is there's no loading screens in the game. So they put a lot of hallways that they make look visually appealing. And that hallway is a loading screen because the door won't open until the next room is loaded. And there's a couple of doors where you're like, okay, a couple seconds, time to open up. But for the most part, you just kind of walking through the game and doors open up and you never have to see a black screen. But I feel like they're really good at making these smaller spaces, like these hallways, look really good.
Yeah.
And look flavorfully. Where when you get to these big circular rooms, sometimes like parts of it will look good, but also it's kind of just like a mess of platforms and...
Yeah. Well, I think exactly what you're saying about the room is the shining beacon of hope that exists in Metroid Prime. In that I think this entire game was sacrificed to the altar of aesthetics. All the gameplay, all the platforming, everything that you would normally expect from a Metroid title is dumbed down. Even combat is dumbed down to a point where like it's all pretty easy and not very challenging, but not like very interesting either. But the areas that you're going through are so good looking. Everything about the game feels on point for a Metroid title, which is hard to do.
And I think that, like, some of the things that we complain about are better in kind of the context of aesthetics.
Yes.
Like, there's a part with the double jump is, like, when you do your double jump, you hear kind of like the psss, as, like, assumably something is shooting, you know.
Some kind of air jets or something.
Yeah, some space thing. And as you're doing it, you do just feel like sci-fi astronaut.
And it's got the right amount of, like, floatiness to it, too.
Yeah.
You know, you jump and you go psss, and you kind of get this little air jet double jump. And even the same, even what we were talking about with the controls, right? Yes, the controls are bad for pretty much everything you want to do in the game. But if you consider from the perspective of aesthetics, where you're like, okay, you're Samus in her suit, it makes you feel like that. It feels good in that perspective, because you're like, yeah, I feel like I'm Samus doing all this stuff. I didn't know Samus had such a hard time jumping around. It didn't seem like that in Super Metroid. But well, okay, yeah.
I think you're forgetting Madridia.
I'm forgetting
Meridia, sorry.
The point is, like, everything looks good and everything aesthetically feels good, right? It feels like you're Samus in your suit exploring this forgotten planet, trying to discover its secrets, fighting Ridley for some reason. It all works on that very sort of lore driven level that Super Metroid works on. It just falls apart in actual gameplay.
I think, like a lot of Metroids, there is an appeal, like, the more you know the game. Like, it's actually fun on replays, because if you can execute stuff without having to redo it a whole bunch, you just, like, kind of enjoy, like, plotting through the world, if that makes sense. Like, that's something I enjoy in Super Metroid, is parts that were, like, so fucking difficult the first time that I did them, like, they just feel good to, like, go through. And so, like, I've already beaten this game a couple of times, and Ross was mostly Ross playing it for his first time. So there's a couple of times where I was like, if we would die without getting a save, I'd be like, I'll get you back there. But for me, I feel like the aesthetics are good for replay value, because when you know where to go, and you're not going to miss sequence, and you're probably going to screw up less, it's just kind of fun going through the environment as, like, an unstoppable Boba Fett type. Kind of comes off like gaming comfort food for me, where I can just sit down and play it, and the music is really good. The visuals are really good. Jumping around is, unless you fall, jumping around is usually fun.
Yeah.
And you can just kind of go through it, and it's not like, you're not going to really get to a point in some games where you're like, Jesus, this area, I do not want to do this right now, and kind of, like, put it down. You can just kind of play this game whenever you feel like it, as, you know, you're watching something or relaxing or talking. And I think I personally like that better than if it was just, like, really good gameplay and it looked poor, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a Nintendo game. They're not going to make it super hard.
Yeah.
Right? Anymore. We're at the point where Nintendo's like, we can't make every game impossible. So for a game that is so early in the life cycle of switching games from 2D to 3D, it still looks really good. Where I think, I mean, obviously it's a GameCube game, not a 64 game, but I think all the 64 games kind of look like shit now, right? They're too polygony in a bad way, right?
Yeah.
And you look at a lot of GameCube games, they have aged. We're on PS5 now, for Christ's sakes. And I really do think Metroid still looks good on its, like, original system.
Yeah, I mean, it's important
for, like, a crappy hardware, you know?
Yeah, it's important to note that, like, the GameCube was competing with the PS2. You know, we had, I wouldn't call them great graphics, but better than just squares. You know, better than just straight polygons. So the GameCube, while it wasn't, you know, a very powerful system and definitely underpowered even for its time, it wasn't bad. It could do things, and I think they made this game, like, look pretty good. I'm never taken too far out of the game because it looks like a bunch of polygons stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, and I think if you pick any game from, you know, 1 or 2 years before or after that, you immediately go, oh, that's worse than I remember it.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't feel that way about Metroid. Going back on it, I actually think it looks just as good as I remembered it. So I think this review for me is personally interesting. And I felt like when we were doing this, I wanted to review more than just Metroid Prime. But I feel like Metroid Prime is a good focal point for kind of how the gaming industry was, how it changed, and how it's going. If you look at the whole Metroid series, because it has a couple of distinct parts now. We have the 2D era, the Metroid Prime era, and then 20 years of nothing, which is technically an era, if you want to count it. One of the reasons we want to do this is they just announced Metroid Prime 5, the newest in the line of 2D games. Metroid Dread.
Is that Metroid Prime 5?
Metroid 5.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I said Prime because we were talking about Prime. But
yeah,
it's
Metroid 5, Metroid Dread.
Yeah,
a game that's been sort of canceled for like 20 years.
Yeah, and same thing with Metroid Prime 4. We all thought that this was going to be Metroid Prime 4 coming out. And they're like, actually, it's a different Metroid product. Early 2D Metroid is interesting. It started a genre. And it's an interesting genre that is huge in the indie game world.
Massive.
You know, there's one of Ross's all-time favorite games is a Metroidvania.
Dark Souls 1?
It's Hollow Knight.
Yeah, Hollow Knight is one of my favorite games of all time at this point. I love playing it, I love watching it. I think it has some problems. It's a little bit long and stuff, but beyond that, it's been described by many people as one of the greatest Metroidvanias of all time. It's heavily influenced, obviously, by Metroid itself, by games like Dark Souls, and it's spawned a ton of games that are just like it, that are like heavily influenced, especially by like the Dark Souls aesthetic and stuff. Part of that's just all these games are made in Unity, and you kind of have to... When you make similar games in Unity, they tend to turn out similarly. But there's a lot of things that are like, oh, this game is just like Hollow Knight, or this game is just like Dark Souls, or this game is just a Metroidvania, and Hollow Knight became the standard of Metroidvanias for today. And it's probably one of the best since Super Metroid.
It's crazy to look at such a complicated genre that you don't think could be an NES game being made on the NES and inspiring people to this day, which I think is crazy.
Yeah, because
people are still trying to capture the magic of Metroid and Super Metroid.
Yeah, and I think that was a big part of like why Dark Souls did so well, is because Dark Souls was also this very thematically driven exploration experience. You know, like Dark Souls FromSoft makes no bones about saying they drew inspiration from Metroid. You know, and then we get into Hollow Knight, which draws inspiration from both of those, and we have this entire subset of indie games like Salt and Sanctuary, and most recently like Ender Lilies, and just tons and tons and tons of others that are just riffs on the same concept from like 25 years ago. You know?
Yeah. Like I'd be in the NES Metroid recently.
Yeah,
I play Super Metroid like at least once a month.
When did Metroid come out? Like the 80s?
It's in any. Let's just look it up.
No, Metroid
86.
Metroid 2 was 91.
86.
Yep.
For a game that we just found out came out in 1986.
Yeah.
That's a pretty hefty legacy to hold on to.
Yeah, the fact that we feel the echoes of it to this day.
And I know I keep just talking about how great Super Metroid is, but I think it is a strong case for the greatest game ever made. They play it. It's the last game they speedrun every year at Awesome Games Done Quick.
It's not always the last game, but it is one of the biggest games.
Yeah.
And it's for sure my favorite. Some people don't know what AGDQ is. It's Awesome Games Done Quick. It's a speedrunning event. They raise money for Doctors Without Borders. And one of the longest incentives that they have is like save or kill the animals, which is a thing you can do at the end of Super Metroid.
And this is just such a huge legacy that the 2D games like uphold over time. Metroid Prime is super interesting because it was its chance to be Nintendo's Ocarina of Time moment for Metroid. They take one of their beloved 2D intellectual properties and find a new place for it to be and succeed off it. And people really did like Metroid Prime 1.
Yes.
Like I have not looked at the sales, but the game did well from my understanding. But after Metroid Prime, they really haven't made a good game in a while. Metroid Prime 2 and 3, I don't super like. Some of it is because the third one makes you use a Wiimote, which is fucking terrible. Metroid Prime 2 makes your beams have ammos.
No.
That's ridiculous. No. There's a light world, dark world. It's all garbage. It's unfathomably bad choices were put into the second Metroid Prime 2. And then they made one of the most reviled Nintendo products ever, Other M.
Yeah.
They decided to try to make Metroid have more of a 2D feel to it, but also add a lot more talking plot. things like, what if Ridley ate Samus's parents? And like, I only know that because I looked it up on Wikipedia, but that's insane. That's a plot point for a game.
That's like very topical. The Cruella de Vil movie that came out with recently, the live action where Dalmatians killed her mom.
Is that really the plot?
Yeah, that's why she hates Dalmatians. It's not just because she's a monster named Cruella Devil. it's because Dalmatians, when she was a kid, killed her mom by throwing her off the parapets of like a castle.
That confirms to me that there's someone in Nintendo whose job is to be like the backstory guy from Mythic Quest, who's just like, what if Cruella de Vil had a backstory? Like, I don't know, man. She skins and eats puppies. Like,
but why? Because she's evil.
I can't stress her audience does not care.
That was not the point of the movie.
And then finally, the Nintendo just ignores the property for like almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's just, to me, personally really interesting to look at what it as a property means to people. You know, like a lot of people, honestly, associate Metroid the most with Super Smash Brothers.
Yes.
They're like, oh, I like being Samus. Their moves are fun.
Yeah.
Did you know Samus was a girl? Everyone learned that in the 64 version. What I was trying to get at is, was Metroid Prime what kind of doomed the franchise? Or did Nintendo doom it themselves until quite recently?
Well, I can't, like, say what Nintendo was thinking. I don't think Metroid Prime was, like, so bad that it deserved this eternal silence that happened to the Metroid franchise. But I do think, in a lot of ways, it is a bad translation of the core idea of the games. Like, Metroid games just should be 2D side-scrollers. And I don't say that lightly. I don't like to use the word should on things. But that's the origin of the series, and that is what the series does best. And we can see when you translate those same ideas into the 3D space, they don't hold the same weight in the same ways that they do. You can make a good 3D Metroid game, but it has to be something else from what we expect from the 2D Metroids. It has to be different. And Metroid Prime is different, but was it really what we were looking for from Metroid? I don't think so. Right, and that's why like Metroid Dread is going straight back to the 2D Metroid. It's following up on Return of Samus. It's following up, on Metroid Fusion, things like that. The games that were more successful and better made overall for the series. It's kind of like, could you take this is kind of a weird analogy, but like, could you take Halo and instead of making a first-person shooter, could you make it like a platformer? Like, yeah, theoretically, but would you lose everything? Would you lose these core components that make it Halo? I think you would. And in the same way, I think you lose the core of what makes Metroid Metroid when you translate it to the third dimension, in at least the way that they did it.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I was thinking about this is because there's clearly an appetite for Metroidvanias.
Yeah.
Because indie developers are making it.
But they're all 2D side-scrollers.
And other non-indie developers weren't making it. Like, that was a genre that was kind of untapped for a while on the AAA games market.
Yes. Yeah, I think there's a stigma of like 2D side-scrollers being like an old school kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we could talk all day about the AAA industry, but they have a huge push for open world, high graphics kind of things that you just can't. They don't care about gameplay. They don't care about how good the games are. They just care if they're big enough to sell. Mm-hmm. That's what the industry wants. So the idea of like, I don't want to call them simplistic, but a more simplistic concept of like a 2D side-scrolling game that's mostly platforming and like intense combat, something like Hollow Knight, cannot survive in the AAA industry, despite that it's done better than most. It's done better than like most AAA games. It's hugely popular, and like one day we'll know about Silksong, its sequel, but it's not the kind of game that you can get outside of the indie scene anymore. And I think that's just because people think it's old school, it's retro or something.
Yeah.
But that's ridiculous. And now we have Nintendo actually coming out with Metroid Dread for the Switch, their primary console. Finally, a 2D platforming side-scrolling game. Maybe that opinion will change.
Yeah, and the remake of 2 came out not too long ago of Samus Returns, which I'm not sure how well it did also, but it's a very fun game.
It is super fun. I played it recently, and it was very fun. But that's a handheld. That's on the 3DS. So those games never do super well when compared to like console games.
In America.
Yes. So I just want to make my thoughts clear finally about this game, Metroid Prime, how it acts both as a game in isolation and as a game in a series and as a game as a point in time. I find it fascinating. It is a little time capsule of a game between 2D and 3D in which, from a design perspective, they clearly made a choice where they went with aesthetics over actual gameplay. But I do find it fascinating how just a simple decision for the control scheme, which was made for aesthetics, rippled throughout the rest of the game and sort of destroyed its actual playability. I do think it's still it's pretty playable. I just think most of the time you're damage tanking and stuff like that. It's not a hugely skill-based game. As part of a series, I do think it's interesting. They decided to stay with what they thought was the heart of the series, which was the feel of the Metroid games, the aesthetic of it, the Lost on a Dead Planet kind of feel, and they nailed that. Overall, like, would I ever want to come back to this game? Like, not really. I think it ages well, but I don't think it feels good enough to really play like multiple times, for me at least. But I found it interesting to play it once, to go back and like see where it existed and the things that it did. So I enjoyed the game as sort of a time capsule. As an actual thing that I had to play, didn't enjoy it that much. I raged a lot, and I don't usually do that, but the bosses frustrated the hell out of me, and I felt bad because I was constantly complaining about it, even though I didn't like really hate it as much as it seemed like I did. But it was a fun game that I really don't ever want to play again.
Yeah, see, it's interesting because as someone watching it this time, I had a lot of fun watching it because it's, I think, a very visually stimulating game.
Yeah, I think that's kind of my point, though.
But I mean, that's all. Well, yes, I'm getting to, but it's clunky. So many of the mechanics that come down to, they just feel clunky. Every Metroid game, their controls are batshit because they have too many things they want you to do. Like, I'm doing the claw on my fucking Super Nintendo controller playing Super Metroid, and halfway through Meridia every time my hand hurts.
Yeah.
But this game, it just feels like you're holding the wrong controller sometimes.
Yes.
And, you know, a lot of that's a product of the age, but a lot of that is the pretty avoidable design decision that we've talked about extensively.
Yeah. So that's our thoughts on Metroid Prime. You want to do a lightning round?
Sure.
All right. So this is not a question. This is just something I noticed while I was playing. These are really prevalent in Magmore. There's little mines that are on platforms that you have to jump around, and you can shoot the mines. And when you shoot them, they release like this poison gas cloud. But if you jump into them, they just damage you. And I don't think they release that cloud. That cloud does a lot more damage than if you just let the mines hit you physically. And I always think that's funny, because like if you shoot them and jump into them, you'll take a lot more damage than if you just jump into them and take the hits.
Yeah. This is such a minor complaint, but like every Metroid game at the end, when you actually start seeing Metroids, you have to like ice them and shoot 5 missiles at them.
Yeah.
Ice beam them. And in this game, Metroids are easy as fuck. They're so goddamn easy.
Yeah.
And except for they later make them color-coded beam shit like they do with everything. And it's like, that's dumb. They're weak to ice. Make them weak to ice, you weirdos.
Yeah, it's like the thing that they are. And then I think they were doing that because of the Metroid Prime at the end, which I don't fully understand what that is.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But it's just some like heavily evolved Metroid. Like all these games like to claim how Metroids are like super fast evolving. And so this one decided to evolve to be weak to your various beams at various times. And so the Metroids it was spewing out were also weak to your beams. But it honestly just made like the final platforming section really annoying.
It's also kind of dumb because even though most times you fight Mother Brain, the 2D Metroids, it's like annoying as fuck. They just make it so fucking frustrating.
Yeah.
It's always just really fun to kind of consider what the fuck we're doing here. You know what I mean? It's a very sci-fi thing. It's a brain in the jar. Apparently it's powerful. Like,
yeah.
What does that mean? It's up to you, the audience. But in this game, there's a giant Metroid that's like a spider, but when you kill the first half of it, like a heart Metroid comes out, and you're just like, I can't even be bothered to figure out what the fuck we're doing.
Yeah, that was true of all the bosses. I had no idea what any of the bosses were. Like, the Pirate Elite was the only one that made any sense. Because you go into the pirate ship and they're, like, experimenting. They're feeding Phazon into the pirates, and it makes them big. You know? And they made one really big pirate. But the rest of them was, like, a big rock golem, a big plant that, like, you had to knock mirrors around.
A praying plantus.
Yeah. Praying plant.
This is not really a Metroid thing. This is a game thing, but like, stop making water suck. Why does every game feel the need to be like, hey, go into water, but physics suck?
Yeah.
I don't care if it's realistic. Just start me with gravity suit, you fucking weirdos.
Yeah, gravity suit exists in this game only for the sunken ship, and it's just so you can get through water, and gravity suit doesn't do anything else through the entire game. So it's like, why? I don't understand these design decisions to like make a manufactured problem and then a manufactured solution. You know, like, why does water have to suck? Just make it not. It's not fun to go get an upgrade that just lets you avoid a problem, you know?
Especially because the upgrade in this situation is just in kind of an unfathomably different place than when you're going to end up needing the upgrade for.
Yeah.
Like, they could not be on the further sides of the map where you're going to bring the gravity suit and where the gravity suit is.
Yeah.
All your beams have, like, a special fire beam. It's kind of cool, actually, because, like, 2 of the beams have they just use your missiles like nobody's fucking business, and then just, like, a Ghostbusters laser.
Yeah.
Shoots out. It does a shit ton of damage, but for not that long.
The thing is, it doesn't do that much damage compared to the amount of ammo you lose. Let's say you have like 75 missiles, right? If you attach that wave buster to anyone for like 5 seconds, that'll be all your missiles gone. Which is fine. You know, I'm not saying it has to do 75 missiles worth of damage, but like it's not even gonna do that much.
Yeah, it's more about the time factor, because there's sometimes you're like, this is a hard thing to aim, and then you wave buster, you're like, it's dead in 2 seconds.
Yes,
I'm completely out of missiles, but I haven't been using missiles anyway, so I'll just I'll just recuperate those.
Yeah, but this game doesn't have a very good ability to recuperate your lost items in the way that like Super Metroid does. Super Metroid just gives you holes where like enemies regenerate and they drop stuff. It's not fun to farm those things.
You can do this game real quick though.
Yeah, but this game gives you really nothing. And we actually got into a point where like we were out of stuff, and our only option was to backtrack for like a long ways just to get more missiles, just to move forward. And it just really shouldn't be a problem. And,
they never drop what you want them to. Like when you need health, they drop missiles. When you need missiles, they drop health.
Yeah, and because of that, using things like the wave buster and the flamethrower, because like every beam has a special ability. Using those ones that eat all your missiles always feels wrong. You really only want to use them on bosses, and then when you do, it doesn't do enough damage to even like matter, right? Like you're much better off, generally speaking, like shooting super missiles, which cost a lot less.
It costs 5, yeah.
Yeah, so it just feels stupid. Like I like the wave buster and the flamethrower and all of that, but they suck.
I think it's fun because it gives you a reason to care about all the missile expansions that you might get.
Yeah, that's something I've never truly cared that much about in Metroid games. I know they're super important, but especially in this game where like exploring isn't really incentivized and it's not all that fun because the areas are pretty linear and the platforming's pretty easy. You don't move very fast overall. I do not feel the need to go hunt down a bunch of missile expansions, and I feel they have diminishing returns on actual like player engagement, because it's one thing to get your first or your second, but it's another thing to get like your 30th, you know? When you already have 140 missiles in your tank and you get another one, it's like, cool, 5 or 10 more missiles. I really don't care at that point, you know?
I find a way to use all my missiles in all my Metroids, so I like doing it.
Yeah.
You know? Like, it's a little different where Super Metroid is really smart, where at the end of Super Metroid, you could just fire every missile in the game into Mother Brain's head. And it's really fun to do so.
Yes, they give you an opportunity to use it.
So, like, it's actually really fun to actually get that just for the final boss, even though, like, Mother Brain's really easy for me. I don't need those missiles.
I can barely beat Mother Brain.
Yeah, but I enjoy doing it. You know, I beat Super Metroid a lot.
Yeah, do not speedrun that game.
Yeah, it is a little less fun to use missiles in Metroid Prime, because in Super Metroids, your missiles are just like they just come pumping out of your gun.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas this, there's kind of, you know, a delay between each of them. And like, yeah, they're way more powerful, but you kind of just can't, like, it's fun to spam missiles in Super Metroid. Whereas in this game, the only way to spam missiles is through the buster, which I personally like doing. Because, like, for example, the wave-based pirates, the pirates you only kill with the wave beam, they're really unfun to fight. But just wave bustering them is, like, pretty fun. Because they're just like, yeah, I lost almost all my missiles, but I don't have to look at them anymore.
Yeah, you know something else I noticed about beams and stuff? This just reminded me, when you use Ice Beam, if you want to freeze something, generally speaking, you have to do a charge Ice Beam. You can't just shoot an ice blast at them. And every time you shoot a missile, it has to like open the end of your gun and switch to missile mode, and then you can fire a missile. And then if you want to go back to your beam, it has to close the end of your gun and return to beam form, and then you can charge a beam. And what I noticed was that most enemies, you spend most of your time doing only charge shots at them, because the normal like just spam button is not strong at all, to the point where like it doesn't usually make any kind of sense to try to spam your guns, which means combat gets even slower because you're constantly just waiting for your beams to charge, and it gets way slower if you're using Ice Beam, because you freeze a target and then you have to fire a missile and then you have to switch back to your beams because there's more than one target. So it's like you charge shot and then it switches to missile mode and you fire a missile and it switches back to beam mode and then you charge shot again. And it's like each enemy could take 5 to 10 seconds, really, even if you're like basically one-shotting them. And that's true of all beams, but it's most egregious with the Ice Beam. And I think it's like another reason combat is just super unfun in this game is that everything is just waiting for your beams to charge, and none of it feels like fast and fluid. Like when I play Super Metroid, I would just spam the shit out of the screen, you know? Yeah. You charge beams sometimes, but your main attack is just firing wildly. And you lose that in Super Metroid. Or sorry, in Metroid Prime.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of enemy diversity. Like early on you just have like shit you can just spam on that's crappy, but later in the game, once you have plasma, it's just one-shotting anything that does that, right? Yeah. Then you have thing you have to jump to the back of. There's like an ice guy and a guy in the Chozo ruins where like you have to like dash to behind their butt so you can actually do damage, and then you just blow up their butt easily. And like that becomes mostly like things you just start jumping over at some point. You're like, yeah, I could jump behind him and blow up his butt, or I could just like jump over him.
Yes.
And then everything else after that is just kind of like waiting for bosses, right? Or color-coded shit.
Yeah.
Color-coded pirates and crap, you know? So like there isn't a lot of variety into the type of things you're fighting. It isn't like you're dodging projectiles coming at you a lot, right? It's really just either charge or beam lock them.
I so often forget there's even a dodge button. There's a tower in this game. I think it's where you get not plasma. You get some kind of upgrade at the top. And to get there, you have to like destroy the columns slowly that go all the way up the side of the tower. And you have to do them incrementally. Like you destroy like one ring of columns, and then you go up a little bit, and you destroy another ring of columns, and you go up a little bit. Who made that building? Was that a Chozo thing? Because like that's a building you go up once.
That's why they put the Wave Buster up there.
Okay, yeah, that is where you get Wave Buster.
Yeah, it's the best alt fire in the game, and there's just like, yeah, it's hidden behind this incredibly arbitrarily created structure.
Like that's not a puzzle that resets itself. That is, you've destroyed a section of the building, you know? And that's the only way to get up there. I just think that's funny.
Yeah, Ganondorf has done similar things to some of his places.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about like the intersection of design and gameplay. You know, like there's so many times, especially in platformers, we see in Metroid a lot, that it's like how could anybody live in these worlds, you know?
Yeah.
In what way is this functional? And it's not. It doesn't have to be per se. But I don't know. I think when the game lets you sit by yourself, you know, you're just like climbing a tower by blowing out the sides. You don't have a lot else to do besides just think about what you're doing. You know, I think a game like that wants to keep you engaged, so you don't ask those basic questions about the world, and you just stay engaged with either the gameplay or the atmosphere. Something that Super Metroid does really well.
Yeah. Also, what the fuck are space pirates? Like, what do they do with their time?
Why is Ridley here? What the fuck is he doing? Ridley's like a big space dragon in this one. He's got these big, gorgeous like techno wings, where he flies through space, and he's like a Mecha Ridley, but he's not actually Mecha Ridley.
They say Meta Ridley.
He's a Meta Ridley, but he's like mostly metal, and he flies through space like a spaceship.
So Ridley who breaks the fourth wall a bunch.
Yeah, basically, and there's no reason for him to be there. He's not even the final boss. You just fight him at the Chozo ruins once you've collected all the Chozo artifacts, and then you're just done with him. There's no preamble to Ridley. He's there on the ship, and then the ship crashes, and then you go collect all your shit. You see him once or twice, but he never interacts with you in any way, and he just shows up to fight you at the Chozo artifacts, and that's it. That's all of Ridley.
Ridley just got really popular because he looks cool, and then Metroid kind of got locked into putting him into everything.
Yeah.
But, Ridley ate Samus's parents, so he just wants to finish. It's like, oh, those were good.
Delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never know what's going on with Ridley. I mean,
also, do pirates work for him?
I don't know, but they're always in the same place at the same time.
They're just like, oh, that's our boss. Don't upset him. I heard he ate the child's parents once. And we're weird bug creatures sometimes, but not in this game for some reason. I don't know. Because, in Super Metroid, pirates are, bug-like. In this game, they just look like kind of human shit.
They're kind of bug-like in this game. They kind of look like Chozo a little bit.
Yeah.
But
they look more like Chozo in fucking Super Metroid.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't really know what space pirates are. They're just there to do whatever. That's always...
if you're a pirate... what pirates are like... a pirate ship? Oh, do you, rob other ships? No, we mostly, raise this really dangerous form of animal. Why? Because the brain in a jar tells us to. How did you get this gig?
LinkedIn.
Yeah. It says they have armor that makes us invulnerable to everything but ice or fire, but you can only have one or the other.
We don't get the good armor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think when you play a Metroid game, a lot of it is the sort of amalgam of parts from before. From the previous series. So you just have to have space pirates. You have to have Ridley. You have to have Metroids and stuff. And if you don't have those things, for some reason, I don't know if it doesn't feel right, because I can't think of one that doesn't have those things. But maybe they're just afraid it won't feel right. They're afraid to do anything different with Metroid, and maybe that's kind of why the series got stalled out.
No, they did, that's actually the real problem. Is they did do something different with Metroid Prime Echoes. They took all this shit out. They added a light world, dark world. Instead of having a gravity suit, you have a suit that prevents you from taking damage in the dark world. Instead of having ice beam, you have annihilation beam, and it has ammo. They just changed everything about Metroid. It was bad.
I don't think you should change everything about Metroid, but do you need to have everything in every game? I don't think so.
I agree to that, but it makes sense to do it in the first one.
But anyway, that's going to wrap up our discussion of Metroid Prime, I think. A really interesting game with a really interesting history. And because of that history, the next game we're going to be reviewing is actually going to be Hollow Knight. So look forward to that next month. If you want to tell us what you think, if you want to talk about Hollow Knight or anything like that, you can see us on Twitter at bossdor4.twitter.com. You can email us at bossdorpodcast@gmail.com. We have a YouTube channel now. It's Bossdor Podcast on YouTube. Hit us up. Let us know what you think. Thanks for listening.
And I'm Joey.